everyone. Hope I'm audible. Glad to meet you all in today's webinar, Best Practices for Deploying and Using Zoho Vault. I'm Lindsay, Product Marketer at Zoho Vault. Along with me in the panel, I have Christopher, Head of Customer Success. So we'll be taking you through the session today. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. You can also write to us at support@zohovault.com. This deck will be shared with you all, along with a quick survey. You can post your feedbacks and suggestions there. Get started. First, let me walk you through the agenda for the day. We'll start off with a quick walkthrough of Zoho Vault. Then we'll move on to account setup, configuration, and maintenance. We'll see user onboarding and management, password policies, and fine-grained sharing. We'll also look into the advanced security features in Zoho Vault. Finally, we'll end our session with Q&A. Zoho Vault is a secure password manager that safely store, share, and manage your passwords, credit card details, and autofill them across websites and applications. Zoho Vault is compliant with data privacy and security regulations, GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 2, and ENS. Quickly look into the security architecture of Zoho Vault. Zoho Vault can be accessed by browsers, extensions, and mobile apps. When a user creates an account, they need to set a master password, and this master password is only known to them, and it will not be stored anywhere on our servers. Only the encrypted form of sensitive data are stored on our servers. The entire data will be transmitted over HTTPS, ensuring complete security and privacy. We have our data centers in India, America, EU, Australia, China, Canada, and Saudi Arabia. Zoho Vault, you'll get a complete password security wherever you go. You can access your vault from desktop, Android, iOS, and iWatch. Browser extension automatically log you into your favorite websites, autofill passwords in a single click, and remember all your passwords so you don't have to. Zoho Vault tightly integrates with in-house Zoho apps like Zoho Projects, Zoho Desk, Service Desk, Zoho Mail, Zoho WorkDrive, and Zoho Flow. Third-party integrations like Google Workspace, Office 365, Okta, cloud storage like Box, Dropbox, and Google Drive, helpdesk solutions, and SIM services to name a few. You can also build your own custom integrations based on your requirements with our REST APIs. About what people say about Zoho Vault. Zoho Vault named as a challenger and fast mover in GigaOM radar and rated as one of the best password managers by top review platforms. Now, let's move on to the best practices part. I'll hand over the session to Christopher. Over to you, Christopher.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I welcome all the attendees for joining the webinar today. As mentioned in our agenda, so this webinar is all about implementing Zoho Vault in the organization. So if you are someone who has already set up Zoho Vault, you can verify whether you have implemented these options in your setup. And without any further delay, let's begin the walkthrough now. So before we discuss, like any product-related features, so let's briefly discuss the system requirements for Zoho Vault. As you all know, Zoho Vault, it is an online or a cloud-based password management tool. So we definitely need a stable internet connection to access the service. And you can also access Zoho Vault using any standard browser that is already installed on your computers. So you can use browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, Opera, and any Chromium-based browsers. So we also have our own browser called Zoho Ola. It is a privacy-focused browser. It can seamlessly prevent you from adware, malware, and also website trackers. Zoho Vault also offers mobile applications for Android and iOS devices. So you can also access your passwords on the go from any mobile or handheld devices. Now, coming to the account creation process, like when the first user from your organization, when they sign up for Zoho Vault, a data space is created for your company in our service. So this data space is otherwise called as organization. So when you sign up for Vault or when you invite someone to Zoho Vault, you might notice this term organization, which is nothing but it is your data space on Zoho service where we maintain your user related information and the data users store in Zoho Vault. So the organization is a place where we maintain all user and service related data. Also, so to centrally manage users' access to all Zoho application, so a user cannot be a part of multiple organizations. So user can be a part of only one instance. So the user can be centrally managed under one organization. So in case if your organization already use any Zoho service, you can ask the current organization admin to sign up for Zoho Vault. So in this case, in future, if you want to provide Zoho Vault access to any user who is currently using like other Zoho services, or if you want to deploy Zoho Vault in your organization for everyone, we can avoid any kind of confusions this way. So talking about providing Zoho Vault access to users, so we have a couple of options in Vault to add users to the system. So we have an option where you can manually invite and add users to Vault. So under settings, you have a dedicated user management section. And from users, you can send invite to users and add required team members to Vault. So once users accept the invitation, they will be automatically added to the system as a user. And we have user groups option in our product. So once we have, like all users added to Vault, you can very well segregate them into different user groups based on their teams or designation or their role. So this way you can easily share passwords to specific set of users. Or if there is a user from an engineering team, they want to share a password with other team members who are part of engineering team, they can simply share the password to the corresponding user group. So we don't have the necessity to share passwords with each and every user who belongs to that particular team or to the particular group. And also, if we hire a new member after a few months, then in that case, you can just edit the particular user group and add the users to the corresponding user group. So they will automatically get access to passwords and folders that are already assigned to this user group. So this will also reduce, like our efforts in sharing passwords and folders whenever we hire a new member. We just simply need to map them to the user group and they automatically get access to them. So not only, we can invite and add users, Zoho Vault also offers an option to integrate with directory services. So we currently support integration with an on-premise Active Directory, or if you have, like a cloud-based Active Directory, which is Microsoft Entra ID, or formerly called as Azure AD. So we can also integrate Zoho Vault with Google Workspace, and we can also integrate Vault with identity and access management platform, Okta. So the benefit of integrating your directory service with Zoho Vault, it is you can easily provision users to Vault. Let's say you're deploying Zoho Vault for a large group of users, or you want to deploy this to an entire organization, or you are someone who have one of these directory services. You can very well go ahead and start implementing these options. So this will basically simplify the user provisioning and deprovisioning process. So for in case of on-premise Active Directory, we have a provisioning tool, which is an exe that you can install on any domain member service, or you can install it directly on the domain controller. So this exe file will act as a bridge between Zoho Vault on the cloud and Active Directory on your premise. So you can easily import users from specific user group and OUs. So this is in case of on-premise Active Directory. Or if you want to integrate Zoho Vault with the identity and access management platform, Okta, you can simply configure the Okta instance URL and the API token. So once it is configured, we can seamlessly import users or import user groups, and we can also very well sync user groups that are imported from Okta. So likewise, we have integration with Azure AD and Google Workspace as well. So you can import users or you can import user groups from Azure. So we have a sync settings option in the product. So under sync settings, you can enable the sync between Zoho Vault and the target directory service. And you can select the frequency or periodicity, how frequently Zoho Vault must sync with your directory. And you can also select the user groups that needs to be imported from your directory service. So once all these details are configured in Vault, Zoho Vault will periodically establish a communication or a connection to your directory service, and it will check if there are any changes done to the user groups that are imported and configured for sync in Zoho Vault. So if you have added new user to the particular user group, Zoho Vault will automatically provision users to the vault. And if you have like someone who has left the organization and you have deleted their account in the directory service, or you have removed them from all the groups, then based on the sync settings, we will automatically disable or delete user from vault. So with this option in the product, we can seamlessly onboard and offboard users. And when we invite and add users, or when we onboard user, like using the like sync settings with your directory service, users will get a regular user role in Vault. If you have any requirement to provide additional responsibility to user, to monitor other user activities in the product, or to manage the product configuration, or if you want to provide them with full admin capabilities to manage both the product as well as users in the system, you can elevate their role from a regular user to an admin or super admin in the product. Also, you have necessary controls in the tool to manage users' access to the service. Anytime you can revoke access to Vault and you can grant them access later. If someone is leaving the organization, you can easily transfer ownership of all business passwords from that user to another user in the system. And finally, you can delete the user from the service. So in case if you have any requirement to implement a single sign-on with your directory service, you have SAML configuration option in our product. So you just need to create a SAML application or an enterprise application in your directory service, and you can configure the application details related to Vault in our interface. So in case if you're using a different platform other than like Azure or Google Workspace or Okta, so we support integration of the SAML single sign-on based integration with any identity and access management platform that supports SAML 2.0 or above protocol. And we also have just-in-time provisioning option. Using this feature, we can automatically provision users from other identity and access management solutions. So only thing that we need to do is to manage user groups manually in this case. So once we have, like required team members onboarded to Vault, so the next thing that we can consider implementing in Zoho Vault, like it is the MFA option in the product. So in today's threat landscape, where cyber attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, multi-factor authentication will certainly act as an additional layer of security to prevent unauthorized access to your accounts, even when the password has been stolen or compromised in a data breach. Also, like many regulatory standards and compliance framework require the implementation of MFA as the best practice. So like SOC 2 or SOX compliance, or organizations that are like into finance, So, like they recommend MFA as a best practice. So in general, like users, they themselves can enable, like MFA for their account by directly visiting the Zoho accounts portal. So under multi-factor authentication, they will find, like all the available options from Zoho. So we have our own MFA application called Zoho OneAuth. So this is an application available, like in Android and in iOS App Store. And in addition to that, we also have desktop applications for Windows and Mac OS. And this comes with multiple options. Like you can use the Touch ID or Face ID, the biometrics that is already configured on the device as an MFA. Or you can use the TOTP authenticator functionality within the app, or you can configure even push notification to verify and approve your access to Zoho. So this is a true MFA offered by Zoho. And in addition to that, we have SMS-based OTP option. So where users can register their mobile number and receive OTP to the registered mobile number during login. And we also support the OTP authenticators or TOTP applications like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or Authy kind of applications. And we support security keys like like the physical keys that are compatible with FIDO2 and FIDO U2F. So we finally support a passkey as one of the options. So these are different MFA options that we currently support as MFA in Zoho during login. So apart from user enabling MFA, like directly for their account, we also have an option to enforce MFA in Zoho Vault. In case if you would like to enforce MFA for everyone, like in your organization who has access to Zoho Vault, you can achieve that in a single click. So once as a super administrator, you enforce MFA, users, when they log into their Zoho account next time, they will find the prompt to configure MFA. So only if they configure MFA with one of the options, they will be able to, like further access the Zoho Vault service or any other Zoho service because it is a configuration at the organization level. And in case, like if user, they don't have access to the MFA device or they lost access to the MFA device, if the MFA is enforced through Vault, the product administrators anytime, they can, like very well manage the MFA preferences for the users. So you can disable or you can reset MFA directly from Zoho Vault Admin Console. So during the MFA configuration, we also offer or we also provide backup verification code directly to users. So if they have a copy of the backup verification code, they can very well use that and like regain access to the account to reconfigure the MFA. But in case if they do not have access to it, and if the MFA is enforced through Zoho Vault, you can manage the MFA preference from the Vault interface as a super admin. And if this is something that has been directly enabled by a user, then they can reach out to our support. And finally, like if you are integrating Zoho Vault with your directory service and you already have MFA enabled for your directory service account, like for your domain accounts or to your Google Workspace account. So when user log into the account, they will be redirected to the identity provider or directory service. They complete the authentication successfully and the MFA. So against the directory service itself. So in case, like if you have any, like sensitive data in Vault, apart from regular credentials, you have, like any highly sensitive information in Vault. So you can also consider enabling MFA here in Zoho Vault as well. Then it will be a dual MFA process. So user will log into the Microsoft or Google Workspace and they complete the MFA of Google or Microsoft. And they once again need to provide MFA of Zoho and then finally the master password of Vault. So you basically need to assess the usability and the sensitive data in Vault, based on which you can decide if you once again need MFA in Zoho Vault if you have MFA already in the identity provider. After enabling or enforcing MFA, to the organization, so you can consider implementing the password policy in the tool. So in Zoho Vault, we have password policy options that can be enforced or enabled for the master password that you use to access Zoho Vault. And you can also apply password policy for all passwords you have already stored in your Zoho Vault setup. So you can simply add a password policy just by defining the character length and other complexity requirements. In case if your IT team has a password policy, you can create a similar password policy in Zoho Vault, or you can create something that is similar to it, and you can set it as a default policy in the product. So we have option to enforce the password policy for the master password here. So once you enable it, users, when they sign up for Zoho Vault or when they reset the master password, they are forced to set up a master password matching the complexity requirement of the selected password policy. Since the master password is going to be a key to access all the passwords you have stored in Vault, a strong and well-configured password policy for the master password will also help you increase the security of the password manager by ensuring that the master password of the users are complex and they are resistant to brute force or any kind of guessing. So, as I said earlier, like the password policy can also be applied to the passwords that we store in Zoho Vault. And the password policy will take effect in your passwords based on the policy usage. So we have use default policy option, and this particular option, will allow user to add password with any complexity requirement. But it will not enforce the password policy when users manually add or update any passwords. When they use password generator, the password generator will adhere to the default password policy and generate random passwords based on it. In case if you have any requirement to enforce this password policy to your users, when they add or update passwords, you can choose the option enforce default policy. So in this case, the password policy is enforced both to the user when they add and edit password and to the password policy. And finally, there is an option where you can choose password policy when you add, different types of credential. If you have different types of passwords for different applications or resources, and that follows different password policies, in that case, you can add multiple password policies in Vault, and you can simply select this option as a policy usage. In turn, when users try to add a password, so they will find an option to select the password policies that are available in Zoho Vault. So based on the password policy they select, the password complexity requirement will be applied to the password. User must create or update password matching the complexity requirement based on the selected password policy here. So after implementing the password policy, you can move to the fine-grained controls. So here you can manage users' access to sensitive operations in Zoho Vault. So you can basically disable users' access to features or functions that are critical to your organization. So for example, after onboarding Zoho Vault to your organization and when people start using it, so there are chances where people might also export passwords from Zoho Vault. So in case if you want to prevent such operations in Vault, you can enable a restriction under fine-grained controls. Not only for exporting passwords, you can also like prevent users from downloading the password data as an encrypted HTML file for offline access. Or you can also prevent users from sharing passwords in Vault to an external user who does not belong to the Zoho Vault instance. Even access to mobile applications can be controlled from the fine-grained controls. So when you enable the restriction of the fine-grained control, it is enabled globally for everyone in the system, including the product superadmins. In case if you want to exclude any trusted people from the restriction, or you want to allow only specific people to share passwords with third parties who collaborate with your clients, then you can go to user specific or user group specific, and you can exclude or exempt those particular users or user groups from the restriction. So after setting up necessary controls in the product and the fine-grained controls, you can also look into configuring, like inactivity timeout for Zoho Vault. So there are chances, like people might leave, like the computers as such with Zoho Vault logged in. So in case of someone nearby who just, like when they click on the extension or when they just switch to the Vault app, they will instantly get access to all password informations. So instead, what you can do is you can configure an inactivity timeout. So you can configure from 5 minutes to maximum of like 1 week. And this will work as long as the browser is open. And you can also enforce inactivity timeout for everyone in the system. So this inactivity timeout, as an administrator, you configure here, will be enforced for all the users in the system. So this can be currently configured for web interface and browser extensions of Vault. And then you can also configure emergency contact or emergency access in Zoho Vault. So as you all know, like Zoho Vault follows the ownership and sharing principle. So when you add any passwords to your account, it is accessible only to you. If you want other team members to access it, you want or you have to share the required passwords to other team members. So all users, including the product superadmins, will have access only to passwords that are owned by them and that are exclusively shared with them. So the usage of emergency access feature in Zoho Vault will provide a mechanism for the organization to maintain a reliable and continued access to critical passwords and sensitive information during unexpected events or crisis. Let's say if a team member who used to manage a project and who has all credentials related to a particular project, if that particular user falls ill, or if an individual with critical responsibilities becomes temporarily unavailable. So it can result in an essential passwords being inaccessible situation. So this situation may impact the organization productivity, and at times it may also extend and create an impact on the regular operations. So to address these issues, the emergency access feature will allow you to add a trusted user as an emergency contact in the tool, and that emergency contact can request a temporary access to all business passwords in Vault to tackle any critical or emergency situations. So by default, you will not find any emergency contact configured in the system. So you need to identify the trusted people in your organization, and you can add them as an emergency contact in the tool. And when you add the emergency contact, as I said earlier, so they will get only temporary access to all business passwords in the product. So the temporary duration you can configure from 2 hours to maximum of 24 hours. When you add someone as an emergency contact, so they will not be instantly activated for emergency access. You will also have a buffer time of 24 hours. So this buffer time will help you resolve any trust-related issues with the particular user, with any other super admins or admins in the product. So after your discussion related to trust issues with particular user among the admins and super admins, you can either leave the user as an emergency contact or you can delete the user from emergency contact list. But once the user is active and when they come across any situation where organization need access to unshared passwords or all business passwords in the system, the emergency contact can declare an emergency in Vault. By default, as we said earlier, like users will have only access to passwords they store in their account and passwords that are shared with them. So at present, this user account has access only to 11 passwords. And this is an emergency contact. So when they declare an emergency in Vault, so they will get temporary access to all passwords in the tool. So before they declare emergency, they must also provide a reason for retrieving the emergency access or declaring emergency access. So once emergency is declared, this user will have access to all business passwords in the Vault. So we also need to notice few things here. During emergency access, users get read-only access to the passwords, like in this situation. So they cannot make any changes to the existing passwords or they cannot delete passwords from Vault. They can just retrieve the passwords that are required to tackle the current emergency or critical situation. Also, we cannot export passwords, the passwords that appear during the emergency. So after retrieving the required password, user can terminate the emergency access. Or if they leave the emergency session as such, after the specified duration, it will automatically change back to original state, where user will have access only to the passwords that are owned by them and shared with them. So, and then after configuring the emergency contact, you can also look into the data backup option and enable data backup for your, users. So basically, the backup option will safeguard users and their data against accidental deletion. So once you enable data backup option in Zoho Vault, based on the periodicity you have configured here in the product, Zoho Vault will send email to users to their registered email address with the encrypted copy of their data as an HTML file. The file can be decrypted only with their master password. Also, when you generate backup HTML file to users, if you do not want to include any shared password information in the backup and you want to provide only the backup of passwords that are owned by the user, you can simply enable this option. So this will not have any copy of shared information in the backup files. Also, if you do not want to send backup file to everyone in the organization and you want to send backup file only to specific users, then you can exempt or exclude unwanted users from the list. So only the trusted or required team member will receive backup files from Vault. Also, we have a cloud storage integration in the product. So in case if you do not want to send backup through email and you want to periodically upload backup file directly to the cloud storage account of the individual users, then you can enable the integration for OneDrive or WorkDrive or Google Drive. And users just need to allow Zoho Vault to upload backup file. So after configuring the data backup option in the system, you can look into, the security options in Zoho Vault. So we have IP restriction and geolocation restriction. Under geolocation restriction, you can draw a radius in the map and you can limit Zoho Vault access to users from the allowed range. So we can create multiple geolocation restriction in Vault and we can assign users to the geolocation restrictions. So if users are mapped to any of the geolocation restriction, then they are allowed to access Vault only from the allowed locations. So they cannot access Vault outside the allowed locations or allowed region. Also, this kind of geographical, geolocation restriction will prevent unauthorized access attempts from specific countries or regions that are known for cyber threats. So, in case if you have people working remotely, this is useful in maintaining a secure remote work environment. So you will have control over from where your employees can access Zoho Vault. And since all the passwords of other applications are shared through Zoho Vault, in turn, you can also prevent access to other sensitive application through Zoho Vault. In an unlikely event of any security incident, so this geolocation restriction will also help you narrow down the scope of potential access points. So apart from geolocation restriction, in addition to that, if you want to enable a restriction in a more granular way, you can consider implementing an IP restriction in Zoho. So basically, you should have a static IP purchased from your internet service provider or an IP address range from your internet service provider for your organization to configure an IP restriction in the tool. So once IP restriction is implemented, users are allowed to access Vault only from the allowed or whitelisted IPs. So basically, they cannot access Vault anywhere outside the office networks. So after implementing all these options, you can also look into enabling rebranding option in the product. So basically, Vault allows you to customize the product logo, the company name, and welcome message users when they log into Vault, they see this welcome message on their screen. So you can customize these options. So this will will definitely provide an increase in the user's trust and also their confidence while accessing the platform. So after enabling all these settings in your Zoho Vault, you can notify the implementation of Zoho Vault to your users. So you can also provide them with the product help guides. In case if you require any kind of training for users, you can very well reach out to us. We can schedule a session and provide training to end users. So once they are well versed or once they have the basic understanding of the product, so they can continue using the tool. They can start adding their passwords into Vault. So we have an import option using which they can bulk import passwords from other password managers, or if they have passwords stored in browsers, they can import passwords from their browser into Zoho Vault. And they can also migrate passwords from spreadsheets. Apart from that, users can also manually add passwords into Vault. So after adding passwords, we can also organize them into folders. So this will help them easily access passwords just by navigating through the required folders. So these passwords and folders can also be shared with other team members. So you can share a specific password just by clicking on the share action right next to the required password. You can share with individual users if you want to, or if you want to share this with your team or to a specific group of people, then you can go to user groups and share this with an entire team. So likewise, we can also share folders. We can share folders with specific users, and we can also share them with user groups or teams. And when you provide access to passwords and folders, we have different access levels. So we have one-click login only option. This is designed specifically for website accounts. So when you share any website password with other team members, at the same time, you don't want to reveal the password information to users, you can go with one-click login only privilege. When users log into Vault, and when they access any passwords that are shared with one-click login only or login only rights, they will not see the password information in the user interface. So if they need to access this particular website account, or if they need to log into this particular website portal, they must install Zoho Vault extension in their browser. Vault extension is required to do autofill or any auto login functionality. And Vault extension is currently available for all major browsers again. So you can install it on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge. Even we have extension for ULA as well. User can initiate a login directly by clicking the login option in the extension or the launch option in the browser interface. Or if they directly visit the website, they will find a Vault icon in the username and password field. So they can use the Vault icon and they can autofill the credential and sign into the account. So user can log into any website accounts without knowing the password information using the one-click login only rights. Apart from one-click login only privilege, we also have other permissions like view, which will grant read-only privilege to users. So users can see the username password detail, but they cannot edit or delete password from the vault, the shared passwords. Or if you want to provide someone with the privileges to update the details in the shared password, you can grant them modify access so they can edit and update username, password, or notes information available in the shared passwords. Or if you want to provide full permission to a shared password, you can grant them manage access so they can view, they can edit and update password details in the shared record, and they can also further share the shared passwords with other team members, and they can also move this password to trash. So in case if you have, multiple shared accounts and, like that are related to websites, we recommend using the one-click login only privilege, because when we share with one-click login only rights, this will automatically enforce user to access the password only through Vault. So we have, some options in the product, like the browser extension will automatically disable the browser password manager. So even during auto login using the Vault extension, the browser will not prompt you to store this credential in the browser memory. So it will be available only in Zoho Vault. So with this kind of functionality in the tool, we can also track or monitor which passwords are being used by your team members. End of the day, once the password management tool is implemented, the next thing that we need to do is to monitor what users do or which credential users actually utilize the most, or if there is any irregular activities with respect to passwords. You need to monitor them and you need to identify them through audits. So only if we use the one-click login only option, we can certainly enforce user to access necessary resources through the Zoho Vault itself, and we can completely track and identify who access which passwords and when. So not only password related actions are captured, we also capture activities that you perform, like related to folders. When you create a folder or when you edit or when you delete, all these activities are captured. And also as an administrator, if you perform any operation on users or user groups or any changes you make related to the product configuration, everything is captured in the product. And we also have a super audit section in the tool. So this will capture all activities we do within the audit section, like viewing passwords audit or exporting audit from the audit screen. Everything is captured and they are available under the super audit. So based on audit functionality, we also have email alerts feature or email notification feature in the tool. As I said earlier, all activity we perform in Vault, they are captured in the product as an audit trail. So if any of the selected operation happens in the tool or performed by any user and it is captured as an audit in the product, we will immediately send notification to all administrators. So you can select the list of operations that are critical to your organization. And apart from that, if in addition to email notification, if you want to receive notification in a third-party application like Microsoft Teams or Slack, we offer webhook integration in this case. So with webhook integration, Once again, you can select the module and operations to which you need notification on the third-party application. So we currently support outgoing webhook in our platform. So the target or the application on the other end must support incoming webhook. So they can receive the notification that we post from Zoho Vault to the particular service. So apart from webhook integration, we also have CM integration. This is once again based on audit. So Zoho Vault can currently integrate with the CM solutions like Sumo Logic, Logly, Microsoft Sentinel, Rapid7 Timber, and Logz.io. So you can select all events or you can select specific event. So all the audit trials or the required audit trials will be automatically forwarded to your CM solution. And you can centrally monitor activities of Zoho Vault along with other application and equipments that you have configured in the CM tool. So apart from auditing capabilities, we also offer reports option. As you know, auditing is kind of a live feed. So based on action, we capture and maintain it as an audit trail in the system. But report, it'll give you a summary or an insight of password access details in the vault. So in case if you would like to know, or as an administrator, if you'd like to know the passwords that are accessible to a particular user or an employee, you can select the user account and you will see the list of passwords that are accessible to that user. If passwords are shared to the user, you can see who is the password owner and what is the privilege assigned to each passwords. Also, on the other hand, if you would like to know the list of users who all have access to a critical account that is stored in Vault, you can refer to the password access report. So in the password access report, just by selecting the sensitive or the critical password or required password, you will see the password owner information and the list of users who all have access to it and what is the privilege that is assigned to each user. So we also have dedicated sharing reports in the tool. So you can simply select user or user group and you can identify passwords and folders that are accessible to a particular user and user group. And on dashboard, so every user will have a breach password report and a generic password assessment score. By default, breach passwords are disabled. So you need to enable this under fine-grained controls. See, the administrators, the super administrator of Vault, they can enable under fine-grained controls, view breach passwords. So once it is enabled, users, when they visit dashboard, so they will have the report on list of passwords that are compromised in a recent data breach or security incident. So in addition to that, the password assessment report will help users identify passwords that are potentially weak, or if they use same password for multiple accounts, they can identify them from the reuse password reports. Passwords containing username, dictionary word, recycled passwords, they can be easily identified from the dashboard. All admins and super admins will have a team dashboard in their account. So basically the team dashboard will give the complete overview and the password hygiene or the password score for the entire organization for the business passwords or enterprise classification passwords in the Vault. So if you check a breach password, this will give you the list of breach password in the Vault and who is the owner of the particular credential. So likewise, you can identify weak and reused password information. So you can notify the password owner and you can ask them to update the breached or weak or reused ones with strong random passwords. So we also have a password policy compliance report in the tool. So you can also very well verify whether the list of, like you can identify the list of passwords, password policy associated to each password, and you can check whether the password is compliant to the password policy that is associated with it. So apart from the reports, we also have a scheduler option. So the reports, basically, you can export them manually as a PDF as and when it is required. But you can also automate and receive the reports periodically to your inbox just by configuring a scheduler in the product. So we have classified our reports as an org report and as an user report. So org report will be available to administrators. So like user access report or policy compliance report, everything will be sent periodically to the administrators. If you go for user report, then you will see all reports that are pertaining to an individual user, like an user access report or unchanged password report, password policy compliance report of a specific user. So that will be directly sent to the individual user based on the duration you have configured in the system. And finally, after setting up everything, you can also configure like a privacy setting in Vault for data retention. So by default, when you delete any user from Vault, Zoho Vault server will hold the deleted user information for 30 days. So in case if you have any other preference, like if you want to delete the deleted user data, their user information, or any data they have stored in Vault, you can choose or update the preferences as per your organization policy. So I understand you might not find all these options in your Zoho Vault instance because it varies based on your edition that you utilize in our product. But you can try to implement all the features that are available in your setup to fully utilize Zoho Vault in your organization.
Let's move on to the Q&A session. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box or by raising your hand. Hi, Timothy. I've given you the audio access. You can talk now.
Anyone too?
Yes, Timothy, we can hear you.
Hi. Just a quick question. Is there a way to set a policy in Vault that allows us to require our employees to change their master password on whatever schedule we set, maybe once a quarter or whatever that is?
Right. So at present, we can only, configure, complexity requirement, for master password. So we do not have an option to remind user or enforce user to periodically change master password right now. So probably, we can, forward this as a suggestion to our development team, and we can add this to our feature request list.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Timothy. And Lindsay, I also see, a few questions in the Q&A section. So I'll take them one by one and answer to the questions. So here we have, question from, can there be two super admins? And I believe Deepak has already answered them. Like we can have multiple super admins in Vault. And will there be recorded? Will this be recorded and sent to participant later? Yes, we are recording this session, and we will share the recorded version of this session, also the slide deck, to all the registrants. And once the video is ready, we will also publish this recording in our recorded webinar session, that is section in our website. And is there a way to set a policy? So that's a question from Timothy, which we have answered. Can you recover master password if an emergency is declared? So master password, we cannot recover because master password is known only to the user. And when you declare emergency, you will still have access only to the business passwords that are already, stored by other team members in the Vault. And to declare emergency, you must also know your master password and logged into the system. And there is a question from Paul about importing passwords and what will happen to passwords that doesn't comply, to the password policies. So during import, we do not enforce any password policy restriction. So we accept the data as such, and the data will be imported as passwords into the system. But later, when you edit or when you update, users are enforced to provide a new password that meets the complexity requirement that are defined in the enforced password policy. And Basil, regarding your question about changing password in Vault, that will reflect on the website. So right now, Vault is just a repository where you can securely store your passwords. But like changing password in Vault, it will not reflect on the target websites and applications. But you can use the password generator in Vault to to generate a complex or a strong unique passwords for required websites and application, and then you can manually update them onto the required websites and apps. And then question from Francisco about password expiration and how to apply them or how to configure them. So the password expiration, it is completely based on the password policy configuration. So if you have a different application that follow different, password rotation cycle, then you need to add multiple password policies into Zoho Vault depending on the applications and the application's requirement for password complexities along with the password age information. And the password usage must be configured as allow users to select a policy. So depending on the credential, you must select the appropriate password policy in the particular password in Zoho Vault. So based on it, you will get reminders from Zoho Vault to automatically update passwords. And in this case, if the password age is calculated from the day you add that password into Zoho Vault, or from the day you update the password in Zoho Vault. So you cannot set any date in case if you have recently changed password and you want to change the password for an application in next few weeks, but the regular interval is 45 days or 90 days. So we need to wait until we make the next update for the proper sync to happen with or along with the password policy. Then there is a question from John about handling client passwords. So at present, John, we have only the third-party sharing option in Zoho Vault to share passwords with the external users like clients or contractors, and it is going to be a temporary sharing. And you have also asked an option about linking the client vault folder in CRM. So right now it is currently not available, but that is something in our long-term plans. So so when we implement it, you will definitely get it as a notification in our forums. So Timothy, I understand the question about resetting passwords for Windows and Linux endpoints within the network. So this isn't something that is currently not in our plan. We are envisioning Zoho Vault to be a very well standard password vault solution down the line if our vision changes or if we have plans to incorporate it. So we'll certainly post it as a notification in our forums once it is available. And Dave, so about migrating passwords from LastPass to Zoho Vault, yes, we have ready-made templates in our product. You can easily migrate passwords from LastPass and other password managers to Zoho Vault. So you just need to export passwords in the specified format. In case of LastPass, you need to export it as a CSV, and then you can bulk import data into Vault. All right, Lindsay, please check if there is any like pending questions for Timothy. So he has raised hands or.
You've answered all the questions, Christopher. Thank you so much, Christopher and Deepak. Let's move on. That brings us to the final part of the session. We invite you to experience Zoho Vault and share your valuable feedbacks on Gartner or other reviewing platforms. Your insights are very important to us. You evaluate a password manager for your organization. You'll have a lot of questions about privacy, security, support, pricing, and many more. We'll help you to simplify this process. Check out our evaluation page and see how Zoho Vault simplifies this tedious process. Thank you so much for attending our webinar. For further queries, feel free to reach out to us at support@zohovault.com and follow us on X and LinkedIn. Stay secure with Zoho Vault. Thank you.